All right, good morning, everybody. Dan Lyons, National Weather Service Raleigh, with your routine Monday briefing, covering the weather across central North Carolina. By and large, it should be a relatively quiet week. We're going to step through a couple different features that are going to move through the area over the course of the next 7 days. But, if you've been outside this morning, you already know it's noticeably cooler and drier as compared to what we saw a couple days ago over the weekend. Quite a bit of cloud cover out there too. But again, much cooler and drier today than what we've seen. The weather this week, at least through Thursday, should be relatively quiet. I am going to emphasize relatively there because we do have a couple things I want to highlight as we go through the presentation. First and foremost, we do have a weak front that's going to move through today and bring a few sprinkles at worst. We're not talking about heavy rain or anything like that, but I would not be surprised in the least later on today, if you're out maybe on your drive home this afternoon, or if you happen to be out this evening, if there's a sprinkle or two that hits the windshield. That should really be about it. We're not expecting any significant rainfall. That is as a weak front is moving through the area, but behind that, things are going to turn markedly cooler tonight. And we actually have freeze warnings in effect for areas south and west of Raleigh, all the way toward the Charlotte area, and I'll show you that in a little more detail on the next slide. Tomorrow will be cool, much like today. Temps in the upper 50s, low 60s at best, so it'll certainly feel a little bit cooler than what you would expect for this time of year. But as is typical for springtime, temperatures are going to be up one day, down the next, up one day, down the next. Things are going to warm back up on Wednesday. Temps will easily reach the low to mid 70s across the area. It'll also be breezy at times, and I'll touch on that in a little bit more detail in the next few slides as well. And then once again, turning cooler on Thursday with temps back into at least maybe the low to mid 60s. So a noticeable cool down. Not quite as cool as what we see today, but you'll notice it on a Thursday. It'll be about 10 degrees cooler. I do want to touch a little bit on the combination of dry conditions and breezy weather that we may have at times. Really through the first half of the week. That could lead to some elevated fire weather concerns. Now, we're not concerned enough to be talking about fire weather watches or red flag warnings or anything of that nature. But like I said, if you go outside this morning, it's noticeably drier out there. And anytime you throw a little bit of breeziness on top of that, fire weather concerns certainly start to light up. So we could be looking at that through at least Wednesday. Now, we are not necessarily precip free for the entire 7-day period here. It's going to be dry through Thursday, but we have another opportunity for rain to return to the area, I'd say by Friday afternoon. There's a little bit of uncertainty in some of the model guidance that we look at with respect to how soon that precip is going to come in. Is it going to be Friday morning? Is it going to be Friday afternoon? Everything pretty much agrees Friday night through a good portion of Saturday will be wet. Okay, and we'll talk about the rainfall amounts in some of the upcoming slides here. It doesn't look like it's going to be terribly significant, but it will turn into a wetter pattern Friday into Saturday. For better or worse, if you're a fan of rain, probably worse, but if you're a fan of at least one day of your weekend being dry, conditions look like they should dry out by Sunday. You see on the map, there's that little patch of green off across the northeastern part of North Carolina. If you're north and east of Raleigh, there could be a stray shower that lingers into Sunday morning, but by and large, the trend will be one of drying conditions on Sunday. All right, so let's step forward here chronologically. This was a graphic that we had put out this morning. Some of you may have seen this in your email already, but we do have freeze warnings in effect for the areas that are south and west of Raleigh in that purple color on this map here. And that's because we're expecting temperatures across the entire area to drop pretty close to freezing, 30, 31, 32, maybe a little bit warmer across the coastal plain and maybe in the urban areas of Raleigh, the more built up areas, it may stay above freezing, but it's going to be a chilly night tonight. And we do have freeze warnings out for the areas in purple. You may be wondering, why is there no freeze warning out for the areas north of there, like the areas along and north of US 64? While the temperatures are going to be just as cool. So what's going on there? Well, the reason we don't have it out yet is we have not started the frost freeze program for those counties quite yet. We did some coordination with our surrounding National Weather Service offices last week, and we've started up the freeze program effective as of yesterday, actually, for all the counties that you see in orange. Okay, but the counties that are in yellow, the frost freeze program will start up for them this coming Sunday. So that's why you don't see any freeze warnings for those areas in yellow. But going back to this slide here, you know, if you do have sensitive vegetation that has already started to bloom, you know, pretty much area wide, you take the proper precautionary measures tonight, because it's going to be a chilly one, that's for sure. All right, so let's step forward and let's talk about some of that precipitation we're expecting later in the week. If you look at today, that real light shade of green, that's just those sprinkles I was talking about earlier. That should be pretty much a non-event by the time we get to this evening and overnight. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, dry across the area, nothing going on. And then you do see precipitation return on Friday. You see anywhere from that first shade of blue to maybe even, you know, bordering on some purples, depending on where you're located on Friday. That's anywhere from maybe 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches of rain that's forecast on Friday. And you can see that bullseye is kind of centered south of Wilmington. So basically along the coast is where the heaviest rain will be. Okay, so there's maybe a little bit of some of the models we look at, some uncertainty with respect to where that axis of heaviest precipitation is going to be, but there's a pretty good consensus it's going to be eastern North Carolina will be the area that sees the heaviest rainfall. Now, with that rainfall near the coast, that would typically mean that we're on the cool side. We refer to it as the stable side of that low pressure system, which would suggest that our chances for severe weather pretty much slim to nil across the area. So you don't even see any areas of you know, marginal or slight on this graphic here. You don't even see any areas of general thunder on this graphic over the course of the next 8 days. So as long as that low stays near the coast, for those of us across central North Carolina, we should be on the stable side with no real threat for severe weather. In terms of excessive rainfall, since today, tomorrow, and Wednesday are going to be dry, there's literally no chance for excessive rainfall there either. That'll be the case for Thursday as well, and we'll see what happens on Friday. Again, once we get a little bit closer to that event unfolding, we'll see exactly where that axis of heavier rainfall sets up. I wanted to spend at least a minute or two on this slide here with the experimental hazardous weather outlook, this table that kind of highlights what some hazards are and what days they may occur. You can see in bright red there, first thing that might catch your eye is the frost freeze, and that's for the freeze warning that I talked about a few slides ago. But you'll see in the fire weather section, you'll see a combination of oranges and yellows and then another orange in there. And that's because it will be dry and breezy at times, at least through the first part of the week, like I had mentioned before. And you also see the wind, you know, highlight with some yellow on Wednesday, and then again on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday, that's because we'll have that area of low pressure near the coast. And as that storm system starts to wind up, it's not uncommon to get some kind of breezy northerly winds as that thing tightens up and heads up the coast. So that's what that's highlighting there. And then backing up maybe a little bit to Friday, you'll see lightning and excessive rainfall are highlighted for Friday. That again is in response to that area of low pressure, where exactly that may set up. You know, we're not looking at area-wide showers and thunderstorms. We're not looking at area-wide excessive rainfall or anything like that. If there were any of those threats, they would primarily be confined closer to the coast, maybe across the coastal plain, but that's really more of a coastal issue than anything else. And then let's take a look into a little bit into the future beyond our usual forecast 7-day period. This is the week 2 outlook, the 8 to 14 day outlook. And in terms of precipitation and temperature chances, you know, temperature is pretty much an equal chance above or below normal. So no clear signals in any of the guidance that we look at to suggest, oh, it's going to be way above normal or there's a huge cool down coming. There's really no signals in the guidance across central North Carolina anyway. There is a little bit of a signal for a wetter than average period next week. And, you know, it looks like there's about the odds are tilted more into the 40 to 50% category for above normal chances of rainfall next week. And then, of course, on the bottom here, we got, just for reference, you know, temperatures this time of year generally in the low to mid 60s, maybe even upper 60s the farther south you get toward Fayetteville and across the southern coastal plain, the Sand Hills, and then lows generally in the lower to maybe mid 40s across the area. So just stick that on there for your reference. All right, so wrapping up, like I said at the beginning, if you've been outside today, you know it's a lot cooler and drier than it has been the past couple days. The weather this week should be relatively quiet with the exception of the freeze warning that's in effect for tonight. And then some occasional breeziness combined with some dry air could lead to some fire weather concerns. Again, doesn't look like a slam dunk that we're going to have, red flag warnings or fire weather watches or anything of that nature, really. But just perhaps some elevated fire weather concerns could be on the docket for the first part of this week. And then the temperature roller coaster, we're kind of coming down the hill today with temperatures in the mid to upper 50s. Same tomorrow. We're climbing the hill Wednesday back into the low to mid 70s, coming back down the hill Thursday with temps in the 60s. And then we'll be steady state. We'll be, 60 to 65 Friday into the weekend. Once we get that storm system out of here Friday into Saturday, things do dry out by Sunday. And then we will see again, chances for severe weather look pretty slim to nil. And then chances for excessive rainfall. At this stage of the game, it looks like there is any excessive rainfall. It'd probably be closer to the coast as opposed to across central North Carolina.